Hi guys, how are you? It's Karmen, back with another video. So I've been living in Japan, in Tokyo, for the past 8 or 9 years. To be honest, I've stopped counting, so I'm not really sure. So over the years, there have been a lot of smaller and bigger things that I loved about Japan, and also things that kind of annoyed me. So today I wanted to talk about those little things that annoy me about living in Japan. I don't want to talk about the big issues. I don't want to talk about racism, sexism. I don't want to talk politics. I also don't want to talk about things that are specific to only certain subcultures. Instead, I wanted to focus on some small things that maybe not everyone, but a lot of people could relate to. Maybe you live in Japan, maybe you used to live in Japan, maybe you've just visited. Either way, I'm pretty sure that you've experienced at least one or maybe more of those things. So let's start. Number 1 is the excessive use of plastic. In Japan, everything is wrapped in plastic. If you go to a supermarket, all the produce is pre-wrapped in plastic. If you buy something to eat, whether it's a snack, a salad, you'll probably get utensils to eat it with. Single-use chopsticks, single-use forks, spoons. Also wet wipes individually wrapped in plastic. While the rest of the world is talking about limiting the use of plastic and possibly completely banning single-use plastics, Japan is really not up to speed in that department. There's plastic straws and plastic spoons everywhere. Recently, some supermarkets are charging for plastic bags, which seems like a good idea, but then look at this clip of the produce aisle in a Japanese supermarket. Every single produce is wrapped individually in plastic. So why do customers have to pay for their shopping bags, but the supermarkets are not changing their ways? This is again transferring the blame from big corporations onto individual customers. Number 2 is the lack of cruelty-free and palm oil-free cosmetics and makeup. This is something I'm still relatively new to. I didn't always pay attention to what's in my cosmetics. I didn't always check the ingredients lists for palm oil and palm oil derivatives. So last year when I went back to Poland for Christmas and I went to a couple of drugstores, I was pleasantly surprised to see that a lot of products did not have any palm oil in them. So if I took any random product from the shelf and I read the ingredient list, there was like a 50% chance that it would be palm oil free. In Japan, I'd say it's like an 87% chance that there will be some kind of palm oil in it. It's not impossible to find good products, but they're usually not on your eye level in drugstores. You have to look at the bottom shelves and really read the ingredient lists carefully. The idea of cruelty-free is not really something that Japanese customers think about. So a lot of brands don't have clear animal testing policies, because the customers don't ask about it. I tried messaging a couple of brands and I never got any response. They're really not transparent here. There are also many people who just assume that the Japanese brands are cruelty-free. And I even found some articles and blogs listing Japanese brands as not testing on animals because they don't really know what cruelty-free means. They don't understand that when a brand sells in China, it's automatically not cruelty-free, because animal testing is mandatory in China. So many brands just make separate batches of product. These go to China, these are tested, these go to Japan, these are not tested. So customers assume they're cruelty-free, but they don't understand that this is the same company. Just because they make 2 separate batches does not make the whole company cruelty-free. Let me give you some examples. So I was talking to this group of people one time, and they were mostly older than me. And some of the older ladies there were like, "Oh my gosh, your skin is so beautiful. What cosmetics do you use? Do you use Japanese ones? Do you use European ones?" So I told them honestly that I don't really use Japanese cosmetics much, or Asian cosmetics in general, because the brands don't have clear animal testing policies, so I never know whether something is tested on animals or not. So I tend to order my cosmetics online or just buy them in Poland when I'm there. And it seemed like this was the first time they even heard about this concept of brands being either cruelty-free or not. So one lady asked me, "Oh, is it because animals and humans are different?" So what she meant is that Animal skin and human skin are different, so the tests don't make sense. Just because a product caused a rabbit to have an allergic reaction doesn't mean that I would have the same allergic reaction, right? And there is some logic in it too. Like, she's partially right. Yes, animals and humans are different, so the tests don't make sense. But the point is that it didn't even cross her mind that the reason I might want to avoid such products is because of ethical reasons. Another time I was shopping with a group of Japanese friends and I saw these face masks on sale. And I said to my friends, "Oh, that's a really good price for this brand, and I heard they're cruelty-free too. Too bad I can't use it, it makes my skin itchy." And one of my friends was like, "See? So you do need animal tests after all." Girl, that's not what I meant. That is the opposite of what I meant. We don't need animal tests. It's actually a brand that's very popular. They sell them in a lot of drugstores. So I don't think my reaction to it is something usual. If people commonly had reactions to it, it wouldn't be so popular. So it's just my skin. There's nothing wrong with the product. I'm probably just allergic or sensitive to one of the ingredients. I'll just use a different mask. It's not a problem. Number 3 is the abundance of unhealthy food and how expensive healthy food is. So there is this mindset among both foreigners and Japanese people that if something is Japanese, then it must be healthy. And it's just not true. There's a lot of types of food that Japanese people commonly eat that are not healthy because they're either full of fat or deep fried or both. A lot of people think Japanese food equals sushi. And of course, sushi is very popular and it's commonly eaten here, but there's many more types of food. There's tempura, yakisoba, karaage, kushikatsu, yakiniku, yakitori, okonomiyaki, monjayaki, takoyaki, tonkatsu, ebi fry, satsumaage. And many of these things are delicious, but that doesn't make them healthy. And yet, I keep hearing from many people, foreigners and the Japanese alike, that Japanese food is so healthy. Actually, recently I had to go to a doctor because of stomach problems. And I asked the doctor what could possibly cause this condition. And he said it could be either because of stress or food. But then he asked me, "Do you eat Japanese food?" Yes. Well, Japanese food is usually healthy, so probably stress. So even a doctor has this mindset that Japanese equals healthy. I once read an article that stated that the rice people used to eat in the 60s contained less sugar than the rice eaten today. So if you hear your grandma telling you, "Eat lots of rice, it's healthy," she's not wrong technically, but the rice she's talking about is probably not what you have available to eat today. I also read about a study in which they fed mice a diet based on what Japanese people used to eat in the 1960, 1975, 1990, and 2005. And they found out that the healthiest diet was the one from 1975. So again, that was a long time ago, and it does not really apply to us today. I work at a school and I see what kids get in their lunchboxes, and it's really not good. Some kids come with homemade lunchboxes. Some kids get lunchboxes from this catering company that we work with. And I swear, sometimes in one box they have rice, pasta, and fried potatoes. And there's half a leaf of lettuce. And that's it. There's no fruit, no more vegetables, just a small piece of lettuce. Generally, fruit and vegetables are extremely expensive in Japan. Compared to where I come from Poland, I'd say it's probably 10 times more expensive. Fruit is often treated here like a luxury item that you give as a present. It's not really considered an everyday staple of your diet, which is very sad. I miss fruit. I miss tasty strawberries. Okay, another one, number 4. It's the obsession with meat and the lack of vegan options. Let me start by saying that I'm not vegan, so I maybe shouldn't care. But even I get annoyed. It would be really hard to be a vegan in Japan. See, I like a lot of vegetarian and vegan dishes. I don't eat meat every day. I eat it maybe 2-3 times a week. But it's really hard for me to buy ready-made food that doesn't contain meat. Just around my house, there's a lot of restaurants that specialize in meat. There's a tonkatsu restaurant, there's some yakiniku places. There isn't a single vegan place. And I live near a big station. It's like a central part of Tokyo where a lot of foreigners live. And even here, we don't have a vegan restaurant. What we do have, however, is this restaurant with this giant sign that says meat, meat, meat over the door. I used to use Tinder. I don't really anymore, but I used to use it. And many guys say in their profile that their hobby is meat. They list their favorite things and they say, for example, I like going to karaoke, I like drinking, I like meat. And it's not just one guy, it's not two, it's a lot of profiles like this. Now, I don't mind eating meat, but does it really have to be every meal, every day? And also, don't you guys have better hobbies? Eating meat, it's sustenance, it's what we do to not die. That's not a hobby. Maybe if you're a chef and you're really into cooking, then it could be considered a hobby. But just eating it? No. A hobby is something like knitting sweaters for homeless penguins or reading Soviet Russian literature. It's not eating meat, come on guys. There's also a lot of food here that looks deceptively vegan. Let's take this cup of miso soup, for example. If you're a tourist and you don't speak any Japanese, and you see this cup where everything is in Japanese, you don't know whether it's vegan or not, what do? You'll probably ask the staff, right? At least that's what I would do. But if you look at the bottom, there's a little bit of English. And it says there, tofu and wakame. Tofu is vegan. Wakame is a type of seaweed, that's vegan too. But that's the only English on the cup. So you might be tricked into buying it thinking it's vegan without asking the staff, because you saw the English writing on it, right? But then on the back you have the ingredient list, and that's only in Japanese, it's not in English anymore. And if you read it carefully, you'll see that there's fish in it. There's katsuo and there's iwashi. My Japanese reading level is very low, but I do understand enough to see that there's fish in it and it's just not vegan. So I really wish Japanese companies would be better at labeling their food. Number 5, it's the rundown and dirty parks and playgrounds. If you Google Tokyo parks, you'll probably find pictures of the nice ones, like Shinjuku Gyoen, Yoyogi Koen. But the problem is, that's not what they all look like. Now let's talk about what constitutes as a park in Japan. If you open a map of Tokyo and you see a green rectangle on it and it says something something park, you might think, oh, I'm gonna take my kids there and they can play in the park. So you go and it might be just like a slab of concrete. Because basically any area that doesn't have a building in it is considered a park. Very often it's a square of concrete and there's nothing there. Let's say you're a tourist with children and you wanna take them to a playground. So you need some equipment, swings, slides, etc., right? So you go to the nearest playground and what do you see? Most probably old, rundown, unsafe equipment, loads of garbage, and homeless people. So like I said, I work at a school, and in my job I've seen a lot of parks and playgrounds. Honestly, if I had come to Japan as a child with my parents, my mom, who's a little bit of a cleanliness freak, she would not let me play in there, especially the sandboxes. So back when I was a child, every year there was a truck that got sand from the beach and then refilled the sandboxes in all the local playgrounds. So we always had this nice, fluffy, golden sand to play in. Japanese sandboxes are basically gravel. It's dirty, it leaves dirty marks on your hands, it doesn't stick, and it's full of cat poop. In my job, I've seen a lot of playgrounds and parks in Japan. I used to work at a school in Tokyo, and now I work for a company in Kawasaki that has a couple locations around the city. So depending on which location I'm currently at, I take the kids to a different park or playground. Let me give you some examples of things that happened at those local playgrounds in Kawasaki. So one time I was taking care of a group of preschoolers with another Japanese teacher. And there was a 2-year-old girl in the group who couldn't be left alone. She had not been diagnosed at that time yet because she was still too small, and the doctors basically refused to give like a solid diagnosis, but there was definitely something different about her, and it wasn't safe to leave her alone. She was very energetic, so basically the Japanese teacher was watching all the other kids while I was following that one little girl. And the park was basically a large square of gravel with some slides and swings in the middle, and around it there was like a flower garden that the elderly people who lived in that area would come and work at and take care of those flowers. So the little girl was walking around in that flower garden area, and there was one patch without any flowers. There was just tall grass in there. So she walks in there. I follow behind her, like half a meter behind her maybe. She suddenly bends down, picks something up, and it's an old rusty sickle. So one of those elderly people left an old rusty tool that could have hurt somebody for the kids to find. So of course I immediately took it away from her, and now I regret doing that, but at that moment I just kind of panicked and I just threw it back into the grass. Now I know that I should have taken it and disposed of it properly to make sure that nobody else finds it and gets hurt, but at that time I didn't think about it, I just threw it away. So that's one for all of you thinking that Japan is always clean and the people are always well organized. Another example is Earth Day. A couple years back, I took a group of preschoolers to the park to clean up, to pick up the garbage basically. That park was probably the dirtiest one I've ever seen. And despite that, there were people having picnics. Because it was cherry blossom season, so there were some families having picnics in the park. So all the kids had their gloves on, we had garbage bags, we picked up all the garbage we could find. The park looked so much better. Honestly, we did a really good job. Meanwhile, the families having picnics there were eating candy, playing with balloons, and they definitely saw us. We were right next to them. We were picking up garbage right next to them. There is no way that they didn't see us. So the next day, we go to the park again, and we're excited. We're happy that the park's gonna be so much cleaner and we can play at a clean park. And what do we see? All the candy wrappers and pieces of balloons from yesterday's kids. And those kids were there with their mothers. So there is no excuse for them. Just how rude and entitled do you have to be to leave garbage on the grass in the park right after you saw 4-year-olds clean it up? I'm still furious just thinking about it. So anyway, those are some of the little things that annoy me about living in Japan. There is more on my list, so let me know if you want to see more of that. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you live in Japan, if you used to live in Japan, what did you dislike about it? What did you love about it? What do you dislike about the place where you live? Let me know down in the comments below. See you!